you still ripping hundreds of packs trying to find that chase card? You need to stop, because the odds are, even if you are that lucky person that does pull it, it's probably going to come back a 9 and not even going to be a PSA 10. In this video today, I'm going to show you exactly how I make $5,000 a month buying raw cards from card shops, card shows, and even eBay sometimes to send to PSA to grade and then sell for a profit, or get some cheap ads to my collection with a high confidence that they're going to come back a PSA 10. Here we are on PSA's website. We're going to talk about the 4 subcategories of grading. We have surface, centering, edges, and corners, all of which are very important. Edges are probably the least obvious one, but the big thing is PSA's centering policy is now 55%, 45%, as opposed to what it used to be in 60-40. It was a big change, and I believe it happened in the new year of 2025. So that's something you definitely have to take into account. PSA themselves, as a disclaimer again, say this is a subjective thing. Grading itself is subjective. PSA puts a lot of importance on eye appeal, so making sure that the front is taken care of. Like I said, the front centering is the most important. The back centering can be a little bit off. I believe the back is still 60-40, but that's something we have to take into account before we purchase any raw cards. All right, here's a good example of a card that I would look at grading. There is a mistake on this card, just so you guys know. I did buy this for about $100, but the first thing I'm looking at with every card is the front centering. You guys can see the front centering on this card is perfect. And then I kind of use the light to look at any surface damage if there is any nicks. And then I flip the card over to check the corners. Immediately I'm looking at all 4 corners and I see nothing. I do check the centering, but the centering does not matter as much on the back. And then after I check all the corners and I know that it's good, I kind of use the light to look at the surface. And if you guys can see the error there in the bottom right corner, just above the bottom right corner, it is a ding. It's like a dent in the card. So I did not catch this when I purchased this at the shop. So needless to say, this is not a good grading play. I mean, on the surface, it looks very, very good, but once you dive deep into it, it is not worth it. All right, so now you guys have seen my mistake. I've been chasing that muck and a lowland muck for a while. I'm trying to collect these tag teams, and they're really hard to come by. You know, they're not in every shop around the area. So when I saw that at my local shop, I had to pick it up. I did a quick centering check. I looked at the back corners. I looked at the back, and I was like, oh, it looks fine. I didn't even take it out of the top loader. I didn't take it out of the sleeve. So the purpose of that video was to show you that there is mistakes even when you do it so many times. What you need to understand, though, is that you need to do your due diligence when it's taking, you know, 100, even sometimes 500, sometimes $1,000 on some of these expensive cards to then grade them for a profit. So looking at that, I hope that gives you a better idea exactly of, you know, everybody makes mistakes with it, but you have to be able to see that mistake to look for it in the future. So another thing to take into account is take those edge cases where you have PSA 9 that, you know, is a very strong PSA 9, and then you have those PSA 10s that are kind of weak PSA 10s. A lot of the times PSA can grade them a 9.5. Now you won't see that reflect on the slab, but what that means is that, you know, maybe the corners get a 9.5 and that rounds up to a 10. So you can get away with like one small white speck in one of the corners, as long as it's not like a cut or like a deep gash in the card. If it's like one of those printing error small white specks, you can usually get away with one. But that's where those data points come in. As you grade more cards, as you see that, you'll see why those things play out that way, and you can use that to your advantage to play for more cards. So now you know what to look for. Here we are on eBay. I'm just going to show you some examples of some cards that might be worth, you know, as a grading play. So let's start off with the Pikachu EX from Surging Sparks. We're just going to look at raw cards right now. So right now it's about $250. So the way I calculate all my prices is I scroll down to last sold here to see what the actual market price is. So yeah, look at 260, 225. So it's around that area, from 200 to 250, I would say. And then we can look at the PSA 10 price now. Let's look at sold. So I saw one up for 850. So we have one sold for 900 on August 8th. Today I'm recording this on August 10th. So it's definitely going down a little bit. I wouldn't say that it's crashing at the moment, but I would say you're pretty safe to put the market value at about 850. That being said, you know, if you buy the card for $250 and you sell it for $850, let's do the math on that. Let me pull the calculator up here. So if we're all in $250, right, and then we add, let's say we send this value max, which is, I believe it's about $60 on PSA's website. So after the tax and insured shipping, we're just going to say it costs us, we're going to overestimate and say it costs us $100 to grade this card. That'll incorporate some tax and whatever, just to get us to a nice round number at 350. So we'll just say our cost in is 350, and then we'll say we sell it for 850, right? So in total here, we're making about $500, and then if we take, that's before eBay fees. Let's just say you sell it on eBay. We're going to just multiply it by 0.85. Now, that's not an exact number. I just do this for planning purposes. So $7.22.50. So then we subtract our $350 cost in. You would make a total of $372.50 on this card. If you bought it for $250, sent it, and it would be about a 15-day turnaround time to come back to you, and then you sold it on eBay. Now with this, you don't always have to go big or go home. There are plenty of lower, smaller value cards that have big payoffs and 10 rates. Usually it's about 10x. So a good example of this is the Tyranitar from Paldea Evolved. Now, anybody who knows a lot about these sets is that they are very bad quality on these IRs on Paldea Evolved specifically, which is why like the Magikarp is really taking off. But the Tyranitar is a really good one because it's about 30 to 45 bucks in a raw card. But in a PSA 10, it jumps up significantly to about 350 here. And let's take a look at the last sold. Yeah, so about 300 bucks in a PSA 10, and you're spending about 40. So again, we could do the math on that. This one is definitely a better bulk submission, or maybe a value plus submission, so you wouldn't be spending as much on grading. So let's say you bought it for, we'll just say 45 bucks to include tax, and then the grading fee, we'll just say you spend another 45 bucks. So you're all in on the card $90, right? And then we'll say you sell it for exactly $300 on eBay, and you take 85% of that, right? And then we subtract your 90 bucks, and that's $165 in profit. Now, you can save, 20, 30 bucks on the grading fee if you send this bulk. Now, the turnaround time will be significantly less. So when you're starting out, it is really hard to allocate all that capital towards, a bunch of cards, and then, you have to wait 3-4 months for those to come back. So specifically for this card, when I picked this up, I put this in a bulk submission. But yeah, this is another really great play. Again, with this card, it's very hard to grade. We can take a look at just the raw card again, just to show you. We'll take a look at this new one here. And this is what I do. You can see here, there's top right here, there's some whitening. So it actually is not that bad given Paldea Evolved's quality. But you can see here, the centering is slightly off left to right. I think this is with outside of PSA's window for a 10. It looks like there's a pretty big print line here too, and even the top to bottom centering is off as well. So I wouldn't buy this card, but I'm just trying to show you a good example of cards that do have high payouts when they're graded in 10s. All right, just to show you that it's not just one or two cards, here's a good example of a card that I've had a really good success with. This is a card that you find a lot of times in like card shops $5 bins or whatever. So this is not a card that you should purchase on eBay, but you can probably find this for like $5. I consistently find this at shows and everything, and it's a very, very common card. But when you look at the 10 price, it's actually very expensive. We're talking, the cheapest one up, it looks like, is $80. Let's look at last sold here. Yeah, so we got one on best offer. One sold for $94. Granted, that was in a different country, but you're seeing that it's around $75-$60. And when you get this for $5 and then you send these in bulk submissions, it's a really good play. Another good one is the Heracross from Paldea Evolved. Again, I tend to like kind of go against the grain when we're looking at stuff. This is a pretty cheap card, and you can see right here, PSA 10, like you're talking 10x here. You can find this sometimes for 10 and less than $20, almost consistently. So if you can lay eyes on this card and see it in person and see that it's clean, and it has a good shot out of 10, it's almost always worth it to send it because it's almost 10x every single time. So those are just two other good examples. Like I said, it's not just one card. There's consistently many cards all across all the generations of Pokemon. So looking at other things that can help you get better gem mint 10 rate, this is a very common thing where you can just clean your cards. So what I do is I have two microfibers. I have a thicker one and a small like glasses cleaner microfiber. What I do is I just gently wipe down the card like this. I take a look to see, and there's kind of a little smudge there. You don't need to put a ton of pressure on it. You kind of just wipe it down, maybe a little bit of pressure, and it usually always comes out. You don't need to be rough with the card or anything, but sometimes this just really helps clean the card up. Specifically because you don't know where they came from. You don't know how other people treated their cards. You don't know how many fingerprints are on there, and they're really hard to see. So just giving it a good wipe down, putting it in a fresh sleeve and a fresh card saver before you send it to PSA definitely makes all the difference. I'll drop the Amazon link for the microfibers in the description as well. Alright, I hope that gave you a really good idea and good glimpse of what I've been doing to build a very, very valuable collection. Grading Pokemon cards is not about luck, it is about strategy. There is some variability, but if you stay disciplined and you stop ripping packs constantly and start buying smart singles, raw cards from shops, in person, online, whatever, and you prep your cards right, you can build a valuable collection with a minimal investment. In a future video, I'll break down how I sell and move all my graded cards very, very quickly. And if that's something you want to see, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and drop down in the comments if there's anything else that I can shed some light on the Pokemon business side of things. Until then, happy hunting, and may your next card be a PSA 10.